Hey, thought I'd shoot you a quick video for this since, as I'm sure you appreciate, it's probably more complicated a question to answer than I can do over text. Just to say, I'm kind of like, I've gradually backed off, although it won't be apparent from this collection, all the hardware that I was buying. And I've kind of ended up more and more just working straight out of Ableton and using more and more MIDI controllers because I just think the plugins are so flexible, and if you need additional modulation, you can just have as many LFOs as you want and just keep on, adding voices and so on. And it's just the flexibility. I've found myself caught up in hardware all the time with the setup of the hardware rather than being able to kind of dive in and play. But one thing I've done pretty consistently is I bought this amazing MIDI pot controller. It's the Fader Fox PC12. And basically I can assign all of these to different parameters in Live. So I've made a template in Live where I usually have about 6 different tracks, and each of these tracks I can kind of control. I've made a rack that allows me through the MIDI controller then to just control this particular rack. So what am I on? I think I'm on 4. So then I think you can probably see, hang on a second. 4, 3. There, yeah. So now just on the MIDI controller, then I'm able to control all these parameters directly using the pots. So then what I've done is I've just basically made 6 tracks on here. Each of these rows is a different track that corresponds with a different track in Ableton. And then I'm consistently then got control of volume, the filter cutoff and resonance, ascend to a delay, ascend to a reverb, the envelope ADSR, and then 3 other values which I can kind of throw in here for doing whatever that I want. So that means each of my racks then consistently has an instrument, and then down here you can see there's a filter. Retur is a delay, Sala is a reverb, and then I usually use auto pan to set up some kind of interesting panning. So that's pretty consistent across all of these. And then for this particular track, then I'll just drop in a different instrument here and usually reconnect it with the envelope over here. And so for this particular track, then I'm using on the first voice at the top, I'm using this plugin from Slate & Ash called Choreographs, which you would love. It's basically does amazing kind of complex kind of voices. It's actually made up, you can see 1, 2, 3 here of 3 different voices. And then you can do kind of complex modulation, arpeggios, all kinds of things, but it has some beautiful kind of built-in kind of presets. So it's good for kind of big pads, kind of complicated textures and those kinds of things. That's what's going on the top there. And then my second voice, which is here, this is the second row down. This is, I'm using a lot of plugins from a company called Fours.fm who do Max for Live plugins. So they write their own plugins in Max. So this is one of theirs, which is an FM plugin. So that this allows you to do kind of complicated, you probably have read this, like two forms of synthesis basically. There's East Coast and West Coast. And West Coast is basically you start with something like a saw wave and get a complicated kind of raspy noise, and then you use filters to kind of cut away at the noise to get what you want. That's West Coast synthesis, and then East Coast synthesis, and that is basically what Moogs are doing. That's the kind of grew from Moogs, and then West Coast synthesis. That's East Coast synthesis, and then West Coast synthesis is additive. So this is what Buchla was doing, where he'll take sine waves and add them together to make complicated noises. So this is basically an FM plugin where you've got kind of the top 2 things are 2 sine waves that are then joining together to make kind of complicated noises. So that's an FM plugin. So those are my 2 top voices is Choreographs and this plugin called Pivot. And then on 3, I've got another little Fours.fm thing, which is actually also an FM synthesis thing. it's a little bit kind of simpler. You're just basically playing with a loop sine wave to make all kinds of different kinds of shapes and things. Very easy to kind of modulate. So that's what my third voice is. So my top voice, the choreographed ones, is long notes. And then I've got the FN synthesis doing kind of these kind of shorter notes. And then I've got the third row basically playing a long chord. And then I'm using that to kind of mess around with the filter and the reverb to kind of pick out bits of the filter. So this, just to say, what I'm doing then is I'm setting up these voices, setting up the notes, and then I will record, live record me playing with these knobs. You probably know that in Ableton you have these kind of automation lanes. So let me see if I can find kind of a complicated automation lane. So for example, in this third row here, I'm playing with the cutoff. So I've live recorded myself playing with the cutoff. And so as it goes through, this will automatically move the filter down here. And I've live recorded myself messing around with the resonance as well. So you'll see some up and down going on there. So when this actually plays, then you'll see I'm kind of, I'm automatically kind of picking out resonant notes and frequencies in this particular thing. So I've just live recorded that into automation lanes. So I have quite complicated kind of automation lanes doing different kinds of things. And then down here in 5 and 6 is basically sort of rhythm. So I have another fours thing. They have a really cool little sequencer, although I'm not really using it in this case. I'm actually just playing MIDI notes here, which is giving me a kind of very subtle bass drum. Don't know if I solo it. Don't know if you can hear that, but it's a very subtle kind of almost tonal bass drum. And then number 6 down at the bottom here is a drum kit made up of sounds from, I think Kaisia is a guy I probably kind of referred to you. He does a bunch of glitchy stuff. He released some wave files of some of his glitchy stuff. So I'm kind of basically playing a little drum kit here between two different forms of glitch noise, just to give some kind of background texture. Again, I don't know if you can really hear that. It's really, really subtle. So that's what's going on with all of that. Hopefully that gives you a good idea. Just to say, so I'm using this, and then for MIDI input, I've got a kind of Arturia kind of, this is a Keylab 64, I think, you know, which has pitch bend, which has aftertouch and all of that in it. It's a very fancy MIDI controller, but I find it's kind of bulky, so it's hard to kind of move around. So I end up using the KeyStep a lot, which is a really simple key, MIDI keyboard. It's got velocity, but I don't think it has aftertouch. And then I've also got the Oxy One, which is an amazing sequencer, well worth getting, and the new one, this one just has 4 different sequencer tracks, although you can actually get up to 16 through some kind of mechanisms, but it's really good kind of hands-on kind of sequencer, but it also has a really good chord mode, so it allows you to kind of pick out kind of complex chords really easily, playing different kind of scales and different kind of chords and things, and then you can just record those and kind of play those back. So I guess these are this is my kind of like hardware sequencer, hardware keyboard input most of the time, and then I do some manual MIDI stuff on here. And then the only other hardware I'm really using occasionally, so I bought a Teenage Engineering OPXY, which is a really lovely sequencer. It's pretty expensive, but very, very mobile and very good for kind of messing around with stochastic stuff and glitch and but also it's got some beautiful voices and things in it. And they have the OP1 field as well, which is a bit more, this one has a proper sequencer in it, whereas the OP1 field has basically a 4-track, the equivalent of a kind of digital 4-track tape recorder. I found it really awkward to kind of record into, whereas this one will do MIDI properly. And Yeah, it's a really nice piece of kit. And then all of my Eurorack, I basically currently just got down to this, which is a bit complicated to look at, but I found this Eurorack module which does amazing input and output from Ableton. So I can push values out from Ableton to control whatever modules I want, and then push them back into Ableton and record them as individual tracks. So I think this will support 16 tracks back into Ableton. And at the moment, I'm just using kind of 2 Eurorack modules. They're both effects. Mimeophone is a really interesting delay. Data Bender does a lot of kind of glitch effects. So basically, I can go from Ableton and loop out to here and through these effects and back into Ableton, or I can go from the OPXY into this deck and then back into Ableton. I can do all kinds of input and output. And I've sold most of my Eurorack. I've still got a few things upstairs, but I'm kind of gradually whittling it down. But this Expert Sleepers ES9 is an amazing input and output Eurorack board for using Ableton really kind of effectively. So I think that should give you an idea. So yeah, I'm mostly Ableton, a lot of MIDI, a lot of automation. I mean, I love the live kind of hands-onness while you're playing, just to be able to kind of mess around with effects and things using the PC-12. Anyway, hopefully that gives you a good idea. Cheers, Rob.